All right, get ready to dive deep into Stonehenge.
Oh, yeah.
You've sent us some seriously intriguing stuff this time. Excerpts from Robert John Langdon's Stonehenge 8300 BCE and a blog post called The Stonehenge Code.
Right.
It's obvious you're looking for a fresh perspective on Stonehenge, right?
Oh, yeah.
And its construction. And let me tell you, Langdon, he's not afraid to shake things up.
No, he is not. He's not afraid to just turn everything we think we know on its head.
Exactly.
Completely upside down.
And I have a feeling this deep dive is going to do exactly that.
Oh, I think so too. I think this is going to be fun.
Let's jump right in. What is so radical about Langdon's work?
Well, I think one of the most captivating things about his work is that he argues that Stonehenge was built way earlier than traditionally thought.
Okay.
Like, we're talking 8300 BCE.
Wow.
And he believes it was initially a water-based structure.
A water-based structure?
Yeah.
How?
Isn't that wild? Yeah.
How in the world?
He uses geological evidence and landscape analysis to kind of paint this picture of Mesolithic Britain that is far from the dry, grassy plains that we imagine.
Okay, a water-based Stonehenge. That's a pretty wild concept.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all seen pictures of Stonehenge, just standing there on that Salisbury Plain.
Right.
So how does he even begin to support an idea like that?
Well, he starts by looking at the landscape.
Okay.
So instead of these open plains, imagine this vast network of waterways and islands that were all shaped by post-glacial flooding.
Oh, wow.
Picture Stonehenge on the shoreline of a massive waterway.
Wow.
He uses evidence like rising groundwater levels after the Ice Age and, the formation of the English Channel, which drastically changed the landscape to kind of support this image.
So he's basically saying that the Stonehenge that we see today is just like a tiny piece of a much larger, more dynamic, watery environment.
It's just a snapshot in time of a much more dynamic environment that was shaped by water.
So where does Stonehenge itself fit into this watery world?
Well, he points to some very specific features of Stonehenge that he argues only make sense in the context of a water-based society.
Okay, like what?
Well, for example, he interprets the ditch surrounding Stonehenge, not just as a simple ditch, but as a very carefully constructed moat.
A moat?
A moat, like something out of,
Yeah, medieval castle.
A medieval castle, yeah.
Okay.
He argues that this moat was designed to hold filtered groundwater.
Okay.
He even points to the foot-trampled mud liner that was found in the moat, which is very similar to the liners that were used in ancient dew ponds, which were designed to collect and hold water.
Oh, interesting.
And this, combined with a dark soil layer that archaeologist William Hawley found, indicates that water was actually present in that moat for an extended period.
So we're not talking about a temporary puddle.
No.
This was a system.
This was engineered.
So it was engineered.
This was meant to hold water.
Wow. Which makes you wonder, why was water so important to them?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Langdon theorizes that Stonehenge was initially a healing center, using the bluestones and water for therapeutic purposes.
Okay.
He even draws on an ancient poem that mentions people washing a stone and bathing in the water to cure their illnesses.
It's like a prehistoric spa.
It's like a prehistoric spa, right?
Yeah.
Imagine people gathering to seek relief and healing from the waters and the bluestones.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Is there any evidence to kind of back up this idea of a healing center?
Well, he connects this theory to the discovery of Bluehenge, which was near the river Avon.
Okay.
Now, Bluehenge is a smaller stone circle made of, you guessed it, bluestones.
Of course.
And its location near water really lends support to this idea that these stones were deliberately placed near water for rituals. It's like they were drawn to water, and Stonehenge was right in the middle of it.
That's a pretty strong connection, right?
That is.
Two separate sites. Both with bluestones near water. It definitely makes me rethink everything I thought I knew about Stonehenge.
It should.
Yeah.
And there's more.
Oh, there's more. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Give it to me.
There's a lot more. So Langdon also noticed a curious detail.
Okay.
There are significantly more bluestone chippings at Stonehenge compared to the larger sarsen stones.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So he proposes that the bluestones were deliberately broken up to be used in bathing rituals.
Like people today might add bath salts or something to their bath. Yeah.
It's very similar.
Wow. That's fascinating. That makes you think about the beliefs and practices of these people.
Yeah.
It's clear that water and those bluestones were deeply intertwined with their lives. And their beliefs about healing and well-being.
Absolutely.
But if Stonehenge was initially all about water,
right,
what happened when the landscape began to change?
That's a great question.
And those waterways started to recede.
Yeah, what did they do?
Yeah, did they just pack up and leave when the water disappeared?
Not quite.
Okay.
Langdon argues that the avenue, that processional path leading to Stonehenge, was built as a way to maintain access to water as the landscape dried.
Okay.
It may have even been used to replenish the moat.
Interesting.
He also interprets those post holes that are found within the avenue as potential mooring stations for boats.
Wow.
So they weren't giving up on the water just yet.
So the avenue wasn't just like a grand entrance, but like a practical solution.
It was a way to adapt.
Yeah, to adapt.
To keep the water flowing.
It's like building a canal system to keep the water flowing to Stonehenge.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's very similar to that.
All right, so you sent me this blog post about Stonehenge, the Stonehenge Code, unveiling its 10,000-year-old secret.
Right.
It's claiming that Stonehenge could be like 5,000 years older than we thought.
Yeah. It's a very bold claim.
Yeah, it's a huge claim, like pushing it back to the Mesolithic era.
Exactly.
It's usually associated with those hunter-gatherers.
Right.
Not, the Neolithic farmers we think of with Stonehenge.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that this blog post isn't just speculation, It actually draws on a ton of research, like scientific papers, archaeological reports, carbon dating analyses.
So it's not just some random person on the internet?
No, not at all. It's really well researched.
So where do we even begin with this? I mean, most people know that standard story, Stonehenge built by Neolithic farmers around 2500 BCE.
Exactly. And this blog post kind of throws a wrench in that whole timeline.
Okay.
Because it points to carbon dating evidence from those Welsh bluestone quarries.
Craig Rhos-y-Felin and Carngo Dog. Suggesting activity there much, much earlier.
Okay.
We're talking Mesolithic era, like way before the Neolithic period.
Right away, we're talking about completely different people being involved.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder why this hasn't been given more attention.
That's what I was thinking. Like, why hasn't this been a bigger deal before?
Well, the author points to these discoveries at the Stonehenge Old Car Park.
Okay.
Back in 1966, archaeologists found some post holes. Those holes dug into the ground to hold wooden posts.
Right.
They initially thought those were from the Neolithic period, but carbon dating of pine charcoal from those holes put them somewhere between 8860 and 6590 BCE.
Wow. So we've got evidence of Mesolithic people right there at Stonehenge.
Yeah, it seems pretty significant, right?
It does.
But at the time, it was pretty controversial.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some archaeologists tried to dismiss them as totem poles.
Okay.
Just random poles put up by hunter-gatherers passing through. So they weren't really connected to Stonehenge itself.
Yeah, that's what they were saying at the time.
So they were trying to make it fit the existing narrative.
Exactly.
Rather than changing the narrative to fit the evidence.
Yeah, it's fascinating how even back then you had this tension between new evidence and the accepted story.
It makes you wonder if that's still happening.
Oh, absolutely. And it gets even more interesting because in 1988-89, they discovered another Mesolithic post hole at the same site.
Oh.
And this time it contained a piece of rhyolite.
Okay.
A type of volcanic rock. And they dated that to between 7737 and 7454 BCE.
So now we have two separate digs decades apart.
Exactly.
Both showing Mesolithic activity right there.
Right at Stonehenge.
What are the chances?
Well, that's the question this whole blog post is trying to answer. And the author brings up even more evidence. They point out that charcoal found in the socket of stone 10.
One of the big ones?
Yeah, one of those massive sarsen stones.
Yeah.
That was also dated to the Mesolithic period.
Okay.
Between 7330 and 7060 BCE.
So we have Mesolithic fingerprints all over Stonehenge.
It seems that way, yeah.
But I'm still struggling with how could they build something this complex?
Right.
We're talking about hunter-gatherers.
Well, that's where the blog post brings in research from Blickmead,
Okay.
which is less than a mile from Stonehenge.
Okay.
And the Open University excavated there and found evidence of Mesolithic habitation. They even found evidence of feasting.
So it wasn't just, a few people passing through.
No, it suggests a more continuous presence.
Wow. Okay, so that changes things.
Yeah. He found even more post holes.
Wow.
But these were beneath the old visitor car park.
Okay.
And he had this hypothesis about what they might represent.
Okay. What was it?
He believed that these structures were actually on the shoreline of the river Avon. Oh, wow.
Back around 8000 BCE.
So he's saying that the river was much closer to Stonehenge back then?
Yeah, exactly. And this led him to propose a different method for transporting the bluestones.
Okay, so instead of hauling them over land...
He's suggesting they could have been transported by boat. That's pretty clever.
Yeah, and the blog post author really explores this idea in detail.
Okay.
They look at the geological evidence showing that rivers were larger back then.
Right.
Making water transport much more likely.
So they were using the rivers like ancient highways.
Exactly.
It makes so much more sense.
And remember that detail about the single monolith at the quarry?
Yeah, the one near the river.
Right. It's almost like they were leaving us a clue.
Like a message from the past.
Yeah, exactly.
But if this river theory makes so much sense, why hasn't it been widely accepted?
That's a great question. And the author suggests that maybe archaeologists are missing something.
Like what?
They think archaeologists sometimes focus so much on the symbolic or ritualistic aspects that they overlook the practical explanation.
So they're so busy with the why that they forget the how.
Exactly.
Okay, I could see that.
And this might also explain the resistance to accepting the Mesolithic dates.
Right, because it changes the whole story.
It's easier to think of them as just putting up random totem poles than to consider a more complex society.
So maybe we need to rethink how we view the Mesolithic period.
Absolutely.
This blog post is really making me question everything.
It's definitely thought-provoking.
But let's talk about the quarries themselves.
Okay.
What do they tell us about the connection to Stonehenge?
Well, the blog post focuses on Craig Rhos-y-Felin.
Okay.
And challenges some conclusions from the official reports.
Right.
Remember those Mesolithic hearths we talked about? They were found right there at Craig Rhos-y-Felin.
Okay.
Along with evidence suggesting quarrying activity.
So we have the hearths and signs of quarrying.
Exactly.
But I thought the official report said there wasn't proof of Mesolithic quarrying there.
Well, the author raises an important point.
Okay.
They argue that similar tools were used across different periods.
I see.
So it's hard to distinguish Mesolithic tool marks from later ones.
Makes sense.
And with those hearths dating back thousands of years.
It's hard to imagine they were doing anything else there.
Right.
What about the other quarry Carn Godog?
It actually supports this theory as well.
Really?
Archaeologists found an artificial platform of split slabs there.
Okay.
Clearly used for quarrying.
Right.
And guess what? They found a hearth dating back to the Mesolithic period.
Wow. Okay, so we have more evidence.
Yeah, it's a pretty strong connection.
But even with all these clues, is there any way to be absolutely sure these stones ended up at Stonehenge?
Well, remember that Stonehenge layer?
Are those bluestone chips?
Exactly, those chips found at Stonehenge.
Yeah.
The author argues that this layer is evidence of a continuous process.
Right.
Quarrying and replenishing the bluestones over a long period.
So they weren't just delivered once and left there.
No, they were constantly being replaced.
Okay, so it's like a continuous connection between the quarries and Stonehenge.
Exactly.
That's amazing. But how can we be sure it goes back to the Mesolithic?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The author brought in mathematics and artificial intelligence.
Whoa, hold on, AI.
Yeah. They used an AI model to analyze all the carbon dating data.
Okay, I'm listening.
And the results are pretty incredible.
Call me.
The likelihood of all those matching dates happening by chance is 1 in 13.7 billion.
No way.
Yeah, that's what the AI calculated.
So you're saying the connection is undeniable?
It's pretty clear.
This is insane. We might have to completely rethink the history of Stonehenge. We started with a blog post and ended up questioning everything about Stonehenge.
It's been a fascinating journey.
So here's a final thought for everyone listening.
Okay.
If Stonehenge is really that old,
as old as the blog post suggests,
what does it tell us about those Mesolithic people?
What were they capable of? What did they believe?
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've enjoyed exploring the mysteries of Stonehenge.
And the ancient world.
Until next time.